Before the Passover celebration, Jesus knew that his hour had come to leave this world and return to his Father. He now showed the disciples the full extent of his love. It was time for supper, and the devil had already enticed Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to carry out his plan to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything and that he had come from God and would return to God. So he got up from the table, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel he had around him. When he came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, "Lord, why are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You don't understand now why I am doing it. Someday you will." "No," Peter protested, "you will never wash my feet." Jesus replied, "But if I don't wash you, you won't belong to me." Simon Peter exclaimed, "Then wash my hands and head as well, Lord, not just my feet." Jesus replied, "A person who has bathed all over does not need to wash except for the feet to be entirely clean. And you are clean, but that isn't true of everyone here." For Jesus knew who would betray him. That is what he meant when he said, "Not all of you are clean." After washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked, "Do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right because it is true. And since I, the Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you." How true it is that a servant is not greater than the master, nor are messengers more important than the one who sends them. You know these things, now do them. That is the path of blessing. As soon as Judas left the room, Jesus said, "The time has come for me, the Son of Man, to enter into my glory, and God will receive glory because of all that happens to me. And God will bring me into my glory very soon. Dear children, how brief are these moments before I must go away and leave you. Then, though you search for me, you cannot come to me, just as I told the Jewish leaders. So now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples." Hello, I'm Becky Fuchs, bringing you a meditation on this Maundy, Thursday. The word Maundy comes from the Latin word mandatum, which means command. It's a day to obey commands or mandates. We think of Maundy Thursday as the day of Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples and the night on which he was betrayed and arrested. But this day is so named because on that last night, Jesus gave some commands about how he wanted the disciples to treat each other and their neighbors and how he wanted to be remembered. Jesus' commandment to love one another is in the forefront of the gospel passage. In John's gospel, there is no mention of Jesus offering bread and wine to the disciples. There is no commandment in John to remember Jesus through what we now call communion. Those instructions are found in the other three gospels and repeated in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. In John's gospel, Jesus washing the feet of the disciples is communion. For John, it was important that any remembrance of Jesus be about loving service. We tend to remember the unusual and the surprising days in life far more than the ordinary ones. I can remember many love feasts from times gone by, but I most vividly remember a love feast where something really unusual happened. The person sitting across the table from me laid a hymnal on the table with a little bit of force. It slid across a slippery plastic tablecloth and knocked over the glass of ice water right in front of me. I remember vividly the shock of really cold water in my lap, the scurrying to find napkins to wipe it up, and the stifled laughter of those who sat near us. We tend to remember more vividly things that are out of the ordinary. When Jesus got up from the table after dinner on that last night and began to wash the disciples' feet, it was no ordinary activity. Jesus was doing the work of a slave. It was unheard of. It was shocking and surprising. Exactly. Jesus wanted to be sure the disciples remembered how much he loved them. He wanted to be sure they would always remember the commandment to love one another. This commandment Jesus gives his followers at that last meal, love each other just like I loved you, sounds simple, but it sure is hard to obey. New Testament scholar D.A. Carson names the irony this way. This command is simple enough for a toddler to memorize and appreciate, and yet it is profound enough that the most mature believers are repeatedly embarrassed at how poorly they comprehend it and put it into practice. But we're lucky, because Jesus showed us how to put this command into practice through the power of a towel and a basin. Jesus showed us how to put his love into practice when he fed the hungry, when he shocked everyone and touched the sick and the lame and healed them, when he respected the outcasts and welcomed them into God's kingdom, when he reached out and cared for the poor, the lonely, the least in society, and when he forgave those who betrayed and crucified him. Jesus loved others in such surprising and extraordinary ways so that we would remember him and his love symbolized by a towel and basin. And then he asks us to love each other just like he loved, sacrificially, tirelessly, and generously. Jesus asks us to remember his example and get down on our knees and love, even when it might seem beneath us, or too messy, or too smelly, or too mundane to make a difference. Jesus asks us, Jesus commands us on this Maundy Thursday to remember him by going about the work of loving others. Every time we offer love in the place of hate, set aside our own needs to provide for another, forgive instead of holding a grudge, care for the least in our world, we remember him as surely as we do when we take the bread and the cup. Loving others is how we remember the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And he tells us that when we remember him and love like he did, we will be blessed. May you be blessed by the ways you commune with Jesus by showing love on this Maundy Thursday. Will you join me in prayer? Loving God, we give you thanks for love, for your love that is remarkable and surprising, the depths of which are beyond our understanding. We praise you for loving us and caring for us, and pray that we might have the grace to be people who are worthy of your love. We are grateful for the example of Jesus' love. On this day, to remember the commands of Jesus, help us to become better at following his command to love each other as he has loved us. Inspire us to be people who are willing to do the surprising thing of picking up a basin and a towel and selflessly serving others. In this time of distance and isolation, give us creative minds so that we might find beautiful and extraordinary ways to love each other when we can't be with each other. Thank you for holding us all in the circle of your love and protection. Amen.